On May 30th, 2010, Stephanie Flores, a 21-year-old woman, participated in a poker tournament held at the Atlantis City Casino in Lima, Peru. She was a keen poker player and, having secured a $10,000 win merely a few days prior, assessed her chances of success as considerable. Before embarking on this journey, she had told her father she would be away for a couple of days before returning home. However, she never reappeared after that particular excursion. Stephanie Flores resided with her father, and their family held a prominent standing within the community. Her father, Ricardo Flores, was a renowned car racer and a former presidential candidate in Peru. The household comprised 5 children, 4 sons and their sole daughter, Stephanie. The parents cherished all their offspring, with particular affection reserved for their youngest, Stephanie, their only daughter, for whom everyone consistently showed great care. Despite their elevated social standing and substantial wealth, all members of the family remained humble and amiable individuals who appreciated a simple existence. The 4 sons were engaged in event organization. Stephanie, still pursuing her 3rd year at the University of Lima, focused on business administration studies while also holding a part-time job alongside her brothers. Furthermore, Stephanie possessed a strong affinity for gambling, from which she generated significant earnings. When a young woman failed to return home following the poker tournament, her father, Ricardo, grew concerned. Such conduct was uncharacteristic of Stephanie, known for her responsibility and never having vanished previously. The man contacted his sons, seeking their assistance. The brothers, too, found themselves unable to reach Stephanie. Subsequently, they began phoning all the missing woman's acquaintances, yet no one could furnish them with any valuable details regarding her location. They traversed the entire neighborhood in search of their sister, but their efforts proved fruitless. The father then contacted law enforcement to report Stephanie's disappearance. Officers proceeded to the hotel hosting the poker tournament and interviewed the establishment staff. These employees were unaware of the participants' whereabouts. Detectives promptly requested the hotel's CCTV recordings and commenced their review. Upon scrutinizing surveillance footage from a corridor adjacent to the conference room where the tournament took place, investigators discovered that around 3 a.m. on May 30th, the young woman entered and seated herself beside a man dressed in light-colored attire, who was already at a table. They conversed pleasantly throughout the tournament and departed the venue together around 5 in the morning. Hotel personnel subsequently recalled observing them in each other's company. The man appeared courteous and amicable. An employee even remarked that the unknown individual bore a resemblance to the actor Brad Pitt, a detail that stuck in his memory. However, law enforcement officials pondered the couple's destination after the tournament. As investigators proceeded to examine additional CCTV camera recordings, they uncovered the solution to this inquiry. It was revealed that Stephanie and the stranger had entered his room, number 309, at 5:16 a.m. A short time later, the man exited and returned with 2 cups of coffee and some pastries. Then, 3 hours and 20 minutes after their initial joint entry into the hotel room, the man departed once more with his backpack and did not come back. Upon his departure, he instructed the hotel staff not to disturb the woman in the room, a directive they adhered to until the police made their arrival. The detectives determined it was time to check the room and ascertain the young woman's well-being. Yet, as they opened the room door, all their expectations were shattered. Officers encountered a horrifying sight. Stephanie Flores lay deceased within her hotel room. She had been brutally beaten to death and was drenched in blood. Investigators retrieved a tennis racket from the room, presumed to be the murder weapon. The young woman's neck was fractured. Blood emanated from the left side of her head, from her ear and nose, and indications of strangulation were present. Additionally, there was evidence of blunt trauma to the rear of her head and lower neck. This blunt force trauma resulted in a cerebral hemorrhage, which the medical examiner subsequently identified as the cause of death. Stephanie was found fully clothed, lying on her back. There were no signs of sexual assault. That particular motive was discarded. Detectives were now faced with the task of discerning the potential motive for the crime. Robbery emerged as a possibility, given that the unknown assailant had taken all her money, cards, and jewelry. The young woman possessed a substantial sum, approximately $15,000. She had one $10,000, and an additional $5,000 had been provided by her father for a new laptop. Following their examination of the crime scene, the police already had an idea of who was responsible for the killing. It was the identical stranger captured in the CCTV footage. The inquiry disclosed that room number 309 was registered under the name of Jorn van der Sloot, a 22-year-old Dutch national. Law enforcement commenced investigations into this man and uncovered some intriguing information. It became apparent that he was listed on an international wanted persons list, and a highly intricate history was associated with his name. Jorn van der Sloot had for a considerable time been a suspect in the vanishing of another young woman, American Natalie Holloway, who mysteriously disappeared on the island of Aruba on May 30th, 2005, precisely 5 years prior to Stephanie's murder. This revelation appeared especially unsettling, suggesting he might be linked to additional offenses. Consequently, police faced a crucial objective: to apprehend this dangerous perpetrator with the utmost urgency. The man was a wanted individual, and law enforcement actively pursued him, though his whereabouts remained unknown. Concurrently with their search efforts, police delved into the specifics of the Natalie Holloway disappearance case to gain a clearer understanding of the person they were tracking. Natalie Holloway's birth occurred on October 21st, 1986, in Clinton, Mississippi, United States. She was the oldest child within her family. Her parents underwent a divorce when she was 7 years old, leading the children to reside with their mother. Yet they preserved an affectionate bond with their father. At the age of 14, Natalie's mother remarried a prosperous businessman, prompting the family's relocation to his residence in Mountain Brook, Alabama. The young woman excelled academically, participated in cheerleading and dance, and ultimately graduated with honors. She was granted a full scholarship, which enabled her university enrollment. Her entire life lay before her, but a planned dream trip tragically derailed all her aspirations. At 18, Natalie Holloway embarked on a long-anticipated holiday to the Caribbean island of Aruba. This island is recognized as an intrinsic territory of the Netherlands, situated in the southern Caribbean Sea and grouped with other islands collectively termed the Dutch Caribbean. This island stands as one of the most secure locations in the Caribbean, boasting a remarkably low crime rate. The aspirational holiday journey was orchestrated by the school for high school students commemorating their graduation. In May 2005, a contingent of 124 students and 11 teachers journeyed to the island. The vacation was progressing splendidly. They had lodged at a pleasant all-inclusive Holiday Inn. In Aruba, the legal drinking age is 18. Each day of their holiday followed a largely consistent pattern. Vacationers awoke at their leisure and enjoyed an unburdened day. They amused themselves, conversed, relaxed on the beach, and swam in the sea's pristine, cerulean waters. Occasionally in the afternoon, following lunch, a nap was an option. In the evenings, they would dine and subsequently visit the government bar, sampling a variety of cocktails, including those containing alcohol. May 29, 2005, marked the final day of their holiday. This particular day bore no distinction from those preceding it, save for the fact that everyone was engaged in packing their luggage. Natalie, like her peers, packed her bags and placed her passport beside her suitcase before heading for dinner. The group of vacationers consumed their dinner. Some persisted in their enjoyment, while others proceeded to their rooms to retire early before their flight. The following morning, students and teachers convened in the lobby of their holiday and to complete their checkout procedures and depart for the airport. However, the teachers noticed one individual was unaccounted for. When the roll call was completed, Natalie Holloway was nowhere to be found. No one in the group knew her whereabouts. The teachers telephoned her room, assuming she had simply overslept an early wake-up call, but the young woman did not respond. Consequently, they proceeded with a staff member to her room and gained entry. To their astonishment, they did not discover her within. Her suitcase, containing Natalie's possessions and passport, remained there. The entire hotel staff and teachers were in a state of high alert, meticulously searching the entire hotel for the young woman. But all their efforts proved futile. Around 11 a.m., a teacher telephoned Natalie's mother and informed her that the young woman was missing and could not be located anywhere. He inquired whether Natalie might have ventured off alone. Yet, the mother firmly assured the teacher that Natalie would never act in such a manner. The woman harbored a strong conviction that her daughter had been abducted. At that very moment, all the teachers and students were profoundly shocked by this unforeseen turn of events. They were acutely aware of how responsible the missing individual was and recognized that she would not play such a jest on them. It was clear something had befallen her. The teachers reported Natalie's disappearance to the authorities, and alongside the police, they persisted in their search. Concurrently, the remaining students and a handful of teachers flew back to their homes. The distressed mother, unable to remain idle, contacted both her husband and Natalie's biological father, apprising them of her vanishing. Jointly, they secured the first available flight from a nearby city to the island to commence the search for their daughter. The mother also dialed 911 and the FBI, informing them of the occurrence. Upon their arrival in Aruba, they promptly initiated efforts to locate Natalie, questioning individuals present at the hotel and resort. They disseminated photographs of the missing individual and actively participated in the inquiry from its outset. The investigation brought to light that Natalie had not spent the last night in her hotel room. Indeed, she had not even appeared there. Some of her acquaintances recalled seeing her conversing in the casino, which was next to the hotel, with a very tall man, a European of Dutch origin. They speculated she might have departed with him. At 1 a.m., the casino ceased operations, and the guards observed Natalie exiting the premises and entering a gray Honda with 3 men. The staff were familiar with these individuals who frequently frequented the establishment. They were Joran van der Sloot, a 17-year-old Dutchman, Deepak Kalpoe, age 21, and his younger brother, Satish Kalpoe, 18. Police examined the CCTV footage and found the guards' statements corroborated by the recordings. The footage they reviewed depicted Natalie seated at the same table as Joran, and then all of them departing together. Certain employees even recounted that Joran frequently appeared at the casino and seemed to operate as a seasoned predator of affluent young female tourists, whom he would swindle for money. At that point, Joran himself was merely 17 years old and resided on the island with his parents. The man hailed from a respectable family. His father was an attorney with aspirations of becoming a judge. This individual was an athlete, performing exceptionally well in school, and possessed a promising future as a soccer player. However, during his teenage years, he began exhibiting behavioral issues. He started frequenting bars and casinos and engaged in alcohol abuse. All investigative trails pointed toward this Dutch man, prompting the parents of the missing woman, accompanied by law enforcement, to approach him for explanations. The gray Honda, in which Natalie was last observed, was parked outside. The father of the male individual opened the door when police relayed their suspicions regarding Joran, who responded by stating his son had gone to another hotel's casino. The officers proceeded there intending to speak with the man, but he was no longer present. As the search for Joran continued, his father contacted the police to inform them that his son and his friend Deepak had returned home, leading officers to their residence. The acquaintances were separated and subjected to individual interrogation. Their accounts were not merely inconsistent, but also underwent continuous revisions. Initially, both asserted they had never encountered the missing individual whatsoever. However, when police presented them with CCTV footage of their interactions with her, Joran promptly recalled having met her that evening. After engaging in the casino, the young woman requested him to accompany her to a club. He assented and extended an invitation to 2 friends, Deepak and his brother Satish, and they all proceeded there together by car. They enjoyed themselves thoroughly, drinking and dancing. Subsequently, They drove her back to the hotel and never saw the missing person again. Nevertheless, Jorn eventually clarified that he observed a hotel security guard harassing Natalie as she entered. However, law enforcement understood that this narrative was fabricated. They had already examined all camera recordings and were cognizant that the young woman never re-entered the hotel. Throughout the investigation, they faced multiple arrests for perjury. Yet, lacking concrete evidence against them, they were released without charges. During subsequent interrogations, their account shifted, claiming that after the club, they proceeded to the lighthouse to observe sharks and then to Aruba Beach for a stroll. Jorn asserted that their companions had left them there. Natalie was allegedly so inebriated that she repeatedly lost consciousness and stumbled, leading him to ultimately leave her alone because he needed to rise early the following day for classes, and Natalie showed no inclination to depart. As per his account, the young woman desired to maximize her enjoyment of the final night and permitted him to leave. Jorn maintained he was unaware of what transpired with her thereafter, but now, reflecting on the situation, he expressed regret for having abandoned her there alone, given the young woman's subsequent disappearance. Jorn claimed that their interaction that night consisted solely of a kiss. They had not engaged in intimacy. His associates, however, stated that the Dutchman toyed with the young woman and left her on the beaches. Police officers meticulously monitored that beach, but discovered no indications regarding the missing woman's location there. A gardener employed at a different hotel provided law enforcement officials with a fresh lead. He reported observing 3 young men, Joran, Deepak, and Satish, excavating a hole in a vacant lot near the pond on the night the young woman vanished. Police proceeded to the specified location, drained the pond, and thoroughly excavated the area, yet uncovered nothing. Time elapsed, but no charges were ever brought against anyone. Natalie was never located. Her family expressed dissatisfaction with the investigation and leveled accusations of incompetence against the police. Those intimately familiar with a missing individual were convinced that Joran was implicated in the matter and should have been coerced into confessing. But law enforcement did not pursue this approach. The family of the vanished woman publicly declared a $100,000 reward for details concerning Natalie's whereabouts, along with a pledge of $1 million to anyone who could facilitate her safe return. Local residents contacted authorities, offering their intuitions and conjectures in pursuit of the reward. Yet these leads yielded no progress. Police officers criticized the parents' conduct, deeming it inappropriate due to the reward. Due to her, law enforcement found themselves frequently sidetracked by extraneous leads, which hindered the investigation. The parents, in the interim, persisted in affixing posters and distributing flyers, actively partaking in the search for their daughter, never relinquishing their efforts. Aruban authorities perceived the Holloway family as exerting excessive pressure for an arrest before sufficient evidence had been amassed. All these factors contributed to complications within the investigative process. At one juncture, Joran, Deepak, and Satish were held in detention for a period of 3 weeks. Local inhabitants anticipated that charges were imminent, but their assumptions proved incorrect. The trio were simply set free. Deepak and Satish gained their release after 3 weeks, whereas Joran remained in custody for a more extended period, serving an additional 2 months in jail. At some point, the Kalpoe brothers informed police that their father had assisted Joran in concealing involvement in the young woman's case. The man was apprehended, yet no incriminating evidence was found against him, leading to his release after 3 days. Joran's father, leveraging his legal profession, initiated a lawsuit against the Aruban police for wrongful detention and prevailed, seeking $40,000 in damages. The disappearance of a high school student evolved into a highly publicized case, garnering extensive media attention in the U.S., a development that concerned Aruban authorities given their primary revenue stream was linked to American tourism. The case gained significant notoriety as Natalie's parents vigorously sought justice for their daughter and endeavored to pressure the police. Joran himself did not fall short in this regard. He willingly engaged in numerous paid interviews on American television channels, openly discussing his acquaintance with Natalie and the events of that particular night. The young man persuaded everyone of his honesty and denied any involvement in the young woman's vanishing. A year after Natalie's disappearance, Joran went back to the Netherlands and resumed his education. He granted interviews to local television stations, asserting he had been set up. He maintained that he had left Natalie Holloway on the beach the night she disappeared and then returned home. Joran, in collaboration with a journalist, even published a book about Natalie's disappearance 2 years later, presenting his narrative of innocence. Thus, the man amassed considerable funds from a narrative and the generated publicity. Under pressure from Natalie's parents, law enforcement chose to conduct a search of Joran's residence and the nearby vicinity on the island of Aruba. They meticulously scoured the entire house and excavated the yard, yet uncovered nothing pertinent to the investigation. The case investigation garnered active attention globally, particularly in the USA, Aruba, and the Netherlands. Joran achieved significant notoriety, and public opinion became polarized. Some suspected his involvement in Natalie's disappearance, while others believed his innocence. Meanwhile, Joran persisted in appearing on television programs. During one such appearance, he proved unable to endure the scrutiny and questioning, ultimately throwing a glass containing a drink directly at the journalist. 3 years subsequent to Natalie's vanishing, fresh details emerged. It was revealed that a witness had provided testimony, stating he observed Joran and his father on the night of Natalie's disappearance. Near the pond at 4 a.m., the young man was seen running from the pond toward a fast food establishment, and mere minutes later, 2 men drove off in a red Jeep. A secondary lead surfaced, linked to Joran's former girlfriend, who disclosed to police that one evening the Dutchman had remarked to her, "Who knows, maybe now you are on the beach with someone capable of disposing of a dead body." These words deeply unnerved her, and she became convinced that an innocent individual would not utter such a statement. Despite numerous leads, clues, and the suspect's inconsistent narratives, the island's police officers felt they still lacked sufficient evidence to file charges. The legal proceedings against Joran, Deepak, and Satish were formally closed. According to investigators, these cases would only be reactivated should new information come to light. They were never indicted in connection with Natalie Holloway's disappearance. Joran appeared to take pleasure in his perceived immunity and burgeoning notoriety. In 2008, an audio recording surfaced featuring a Dutchman recounting Natalie's death. This was obtained via a hidden camera by Dutch journalists. In the recording, he detailed being on the beach with Natalie where they engaged in sexual activity. But afterward, she suddenly convulsed and lost consciousness. He then requested his friends to transport her body by boat, and they disposed of it by casting it into the sea. Subsequently, another recording surfaced where he explicitly expressed satisfaction that Natalie's body had not been found, implying dire consequences if it had, and also suggested he received assistance in this act. However, what was perplexing was his apparent evasion of any repercussions. The police officers did not take his televised confession seriously, stating it was insufficient for a trial. To prosecute him, they first required the discovery of a body and corroborating evidence, which they lacked. They speculated that Joran was merely seeking fame and financial gain. This was why he fabricated all those narratives. For a period, Joran even underwent treatment at a psychiatric clinic, having admitted himself. Subsequently, he relocated to Bangkok, Thailand, where he acquired a restaurant using funds accrued from interviews and books and commenced entrepreneurial activities. In that same year, another journalist conducted an interview with Joran during his time in Thailand. The man stated he had sold Natalie into sex slavery for financial gain, sharing the proceeds with the Kalpo brothers who assisted him. He also claimed to have trafficked Thai women into slavery in the Netherlands, earning $30,000 per woman from this activity. Upon the conclusion of the interview, he telephoned her back, declaring it had all been a jest. Joran's conduct proved to be utterly inappropriate. Following the interview, he encountered difficulties with local authorities. Police investigated the information he had divulged concerning the trafficking of Thai women. Consequently, He was compelled to depart the country, abandoning his flourishing business, though he later succeeded in selling the restaurant. Soon after, his father succumbed to a heart attack, and the man held himself responsible for his father's demise. For a period, he was once more admitted to a psychiatric hospital due to experiencing a nervous breakdown. Upon his discharge from the hospital, Joran faced significant hardship. He now required funds and devised a novel method to acquire them. In 2019, an attorney representing the Holloway family disclosed that a Dutchman, using an anonymous identity, had contacted him to propose an agreement. The man sought $250,000 for revealing details concerning the location of Natalie Holloway's remains, requesting an upfront payment of $25,000. The investigation uncovered that Joran was the sender of these messages. Natalie's father arrived with an advance of $25,000 and handed it over to Joran when they convened on the island of Aruba. On this occasion, the man presented a fresh narrative. He purportedly picked Natalie up, but she desired to be released. Consequently, Joran threw her, and upon impact, she inadvertently struck her head on a rock, dying instantly. He subsequently sought his father's help, and together they allegedly interred her within the house's foundation. The young man asserted it was an accident, maintaining his innocence. He pinpointed the supposed burial site. Police verified this information and determined it to be false. The house had already been constructed by the time Natalie disappeared, rendering it impossible to conceal the body there. Moreover, following this meeting, the father of the missing individual received an email from him, stating he had fabricated the entire account. The parents of the missing Natalie collaborated with the FBI to accumulate evidence against the Dutchman, aiming to prosecute him for at least extortion fraud. And ultimately, a criminal case was initiated. Joran faced charges of extortion, and subsequent to this, the man absconded to Peru, which is where the Stephanie Flores narrative unfolds. On June 3, 2010, law enforcement received a phone call from Joran's former girlfriend, providing a tip regarding the Dutchman's location. It was revealed that he had contacted her, requesting to borrow funds for a flight, and she, in turn, reported him to the police. Joran was apprehended in Chile, having traversed a considerable distance from Peru to Chile via 2 taxis, with intentions of purchasing an airline ticket there. During the apprehension, police observed that the man's attire was stained with blood. Seemingly, he was in such haste to flee that he lacked the opportunity to change his garments. Joran was extradited to Peru, facing charges for the murder of Stephanie Flores. In his initial police interrogation, he maintained his innocence. The man asserted that armed male robbers had entered the hotel room, purloined all valuables, and shot the young woman. He claimed he managed to escape, and the gunfire caused the deceased woman's blood to get on his clothing. However, law enforcement naturally dismissed this narrative. The hotel's CCTV footage displayed no armed robbers, no one reported hearing gunshots, and crucially, the young woman had not been shot. For days following his arrest, he ultimately admitted to the murder. Joran recounted that upon their entry into the room, everything was pleasant, and they engaged in agreeable conversation. He then observed Stephanie Flores accessing his laptop and perusing details concerning the Natalie Holloway case and his potential connection to her disappearance. The man proceeded to clarify to Stephanie that it was a misunderstanding, asserting he had no involvement in Natalie's case and was entirely blameless. Yet, the young woman was frightened and did not credit his explanation. She struck him in the face and attempted to flee the room, which ignited his fury. The man assaulted her, elbowing her in the nose before commencing to choke her. Blood was ubiquitous, including on his shirt, prompting him to remove it and place it over the young woman's face, obscuring her mouth. Joran ceased his actions only when she ceased exhibiting signs of life. The man expressed remorse for the incident, attributing it to alcohol and the young woman's sudden behavior. He lamented being fearful she would report him to the police. It was an impetuous act on his part. He merely lost self-control and could not countenance being pursued by law enforcement. However, investigators believed the situation was far more straightforward. They posited that the motive for the murder might have been robbery, given that money and valuables were absent from the residence. Joran, recognizing he now confronted a lengthy prison term in Peru, attempted to negotiate an agreement with the prosecution. He proposed revealing the location of Natalie Holloway's remains to police if all charges against him were dropped. However, no one accepted this proposition. Consequently, the trial commenced. All incriminating evidence pointed towards him, causing the proceedings to progress with relative swiftness. The prosecutor laid out all the proofs. The man was captured on CCTV entering and exiting the room solely with Stephanie. He bore the deceased woman's blood on his wrist, and his DNA was found on the victim's body and the weapon used in the murder. The defense had no grounds for objection, prompting Joran to enter a guilty plea, following his lawyer's counsel, who assured him a maximum sentence of 15 years. Ultimately, Joran was convicted and received a sentence of 28 years in prison. He was also mandated to pay compensation of $75,000 to the family of the deceased Stephanie. He expressed displeasure with the verdict, blaming his attorney and the police, whom he claimed had coerced his confession. It was also determined that upon completing his sentence in Peru, Joran would be extradited to the United States, where he would face trial on charges of fraud and extortion related to the Holloway family. In 2014, while incarcerated, Joran encountered Ladi Figueroa, a 33-year-old Peruvian female accountant who visited the prison to sell confections and cigarettes. A romance blossomed between them, and they soon chose to marry. Subsequently, the couple had a child, a girl whom the spouses named Trudy Vandersloot, in tribute to Joran's grandmother, Trudy. Owing to the lenient regulations, his wife visited him in prison twice weekly. She characterized him as the kindest man in the world. However, in 2020, Joran opted to divorce her due to another, more attractive young woman, 24-year-old Ava, with whom he was engaged in the illicit trafficking of substances within the prison. When this activity was uncovered, Joran received an additional 7 years for drug distribution, following which he was transferred to a more stringent correctional facility where romantic relationships were prohibited. Joran maintains correspondence with Ava and other women who sent him letters. Joran has never faced charges directly related to Natalie Holloway's disappearance. Natalie's vanishing persists as an unsolved case, yet her family holds a firm conviction that Joran is responsible for her death. Within the community, the general consensus was that this trio, Joran and the two Calpo brothers, were implicated in the incident. They had a reputation as fortune seekers who defrauded affluent American tourists of their money. Joran served as the primary figure among them, distinguished by his fluent English, attractive demeanor, and ability to engage women. The other two brothers supported these efforts. The victim's family believes that Natalie also fell prey to such deceit and that Joran intended to extort money from her. While they may not have purpose to kill Natalie, something unforeseen transpired that night. Perhaps she withheld the money, and they failed in their attempt to rob her. During the ensuing altercation, the young woman perished, and they subsequently disposed of her body to avoid accountability. It is highly probable they cast the body into the ocean, where sharks reside, and received assistance from others in this act. Alternatively, a more sinister event might have occurred, involving Natalie's intentional murder. The Holloway family's conviction in this theory was fortified following the news of Joran's murder of Stephanie, a woman he also encountered in a casino, with whom he departed and subsequently killed. Indeed, the two narratives bear a striking resemblance. Initially, Peruvian authorities had consented to extradite Joran Vandersloot to the U.S. only after he had completed his sentence for Stephanie Flores' murder. However, in May, authorities altered their stance, agreeing to temporarily transfer him to the U.S. for arraignment, after which he would be repatriated to Peru. This change was prompted by the advanced age of key prosecution witnesses, who could not afford to wait many more years. The Peruvian ambassador to the U.S. expressed hope that Joran's temporary extradition would enable the legal process to bring solace to the Holloway family, who were experiencing grief akin to that of the Flores family. Joran himself resisted this development, attempting through his attorney to have the extradition annulled on grounds of insufficient prior notification. But his motion was rejected. In late May 2023, he suffered a severe beating within a Peruvian prison. In early June, FBI agents arrived for him in Peru, utilizing one of their aircraft to facilitate his extradition. On June 8, 2023, the plane transporting Jorn van der Sloot touched down in the United States. He was subsequently transferred to a prison in Birmingham, located near Natalie Holloway's hometown. There is currently no information available regarding the commencement of the trial.